comes from Romans this morning. Those who are led by God's Spirit are God's son. For the Spirit that God has given you does not make you a slave and cause you to be afraid. Instead, the Spirit makes you God's sons. And by the Spirit's power, we cry to God, Father, my Father. God's Spirit joins himself to our spirits to declare that we are God's children. Since we are his children, we will possess the blessings he keeps for us people. And we will also possess with Christ what God has kept for him. For if we share Christ's suffering, we will also share his glory.
Thank you, Ken. What does it mean to be a child of God? I think that's one of the easiest and also one of the hardest questions to answer. Now that's easy because each one of us can picture a child. Innocence, energy, boundless energy, taking risks. Saying whatever comes off the top of your head and having so many of your needs met. And we certainly could make an exhaustive list. But I also think it's one of the hardest questions to answer. Because as a child, we represent our parents. Each one of us has the DNA of our moms and dads. Now that leads us to the nurture-nature debate, but think of this scenario. You're born with black skin. You're adopted into a white family. And instantly, in our culture, there are challenges, but also opportunities. Or you inherit a mental illness. And instantly that creates challenges and opportunities to parenting. Or you're born with great athletic ability. Your parents were star athletes in college, but what if you like to read? What if your gift is in the academic arena? But the pressure to succeed on the game floor is pushing you to areas that you may not be comfortable with. The hard question when we realize these words from the Apostle Paul, that we are a child of God, and that means adopted by the Spirit, means that like a child who resembles their parent, we resemble our heavenly parent. And the hard part comes when we begin to think that adoption means perfect, unblemished, performing and being able to perform certain tasks for our heavenly parent. And that is hard if we think that this is what it means to be a child of God. So I'm going to offer you something different. Adoption doesn't mean perfect, unblemished. Adoption means acceptance of our brokenness, our broken bodies, our broken spirit, our broken lives, even our broken plans. Remember what Paul says, we do not fall back into fear. We receive the spirit of adoption, and this means hope. Right now, I'm going to do something risky. Or you might say it's a bit unorthodox. I'm going to show a clip here that is quite lengthy. It's about 10 and a half minutes long. It's risky because the average adult attention span is only 7 minutes long. That's why when you're watching a TV program, you have a commercial every 7 minutes. Oh, that explains why. This clip that we're going to watch from Claire Wimbush was shown to us at the clergy session that I attended in January. And after we watched this clip, I was sitting with a bunch of clergy, and we were all debating whether we should show this clip during our sermons. Now, we all agreed that everyone in our congregation should see this clip. We were just disagreeing as to the method of the transmission. So I decided to show it to our youth group. Talk about short attention spans. They can only go 30 seconds without looking at their phone. But as they watched this 10 and a half minute clip, not one of them looked at their phone. And afterwards, they all agreed, Seth, you need to show this in worship. Now, a bit of a warning here. Claire Wimbush has what she calls spastic cerebral palsy. If you remember Molly Runge, who was our director up at Camp Norwesca, she also had a very similar condition. And so at first, there might be moments where you have a hard time understanding her. But I can tell you and assure you that you will understand. Let us watch. Okay?
I was born with spastic cerebral palsy, which is a neuromuscular disorder, which is basically a fancy clinical way of saying that my muscles do not speak the same dialect as my brain. The list of things that I cannot do is long. I cannot walk, stand, wash my own hair, or tie my own shoes. But I can keep a 2-year-old interested for 5 minutes, which is a feat. Preach a homily, celebrate the Eucharist, train my service dog, and apparently function in full-time parish ministry.
Hey, Kathleen, can I ask you a question?
I never thought much about my disability, about my body when I was growing up. It wasn't until I got to college that I started thinking perhaps it was time to figure out what being a Christian with a disability actually meant. We went to chapel every Tuesday in the Wren building, and in order to get into the chapel, I used an outdoor lift that would help me to ascend a flight of stairs. One Holy Week, I got on the lift to go down, and it creaked down about 6 inches and stopped dead. So there I was, in my wheelchair at 10:45 at night on Monday, Thursday, suspended 6 feet above the pavement, with absolutely no way to get down. And I looked at my friends, and they looked at me, and we scratched our heads a little bit. And finally somebody said, well, we'll just have to we'll leave the chair and lift you. So we unstrapped me, and somebody held my shoulders, and somebody held my legs, and somebody held my Book of Common Prayer. Because good Episcopalians don't go anywhere without the Book of Common Prayer. And they lifted me down. And I remember it was while I was spread-eagled above the pavement. In the dark of the night before Good Friday, and I thought, we need theology for this, for what we're doing, and then I thought, well, actually, we already have theology for this. Now you are the body of Christ, and individually members of it. And then I looked at the Gospels, and I saw, and God became this body too. Not any body, one particular body, in Galilee, at a particular point in history. Jesus' particular body is the body that was broken on the cross, and then raised again after 3 days, still bearing the wounds of the cross. And God, who can make oceans and elephants with ears the size of tablecloths and blue butterflies and all the wonderful things that we see around us, could surely have found the power to close those wounds and to resurrect the Son of God in a perfectly whole body. So the fact that God did not choose to do that tells me something mysterious about how God wishes to be in the world. God never chooses to be with us except to be with us in our brokenness. What the body of Jesus shows us is a kind of wholeness that does not depend on physical perfection. If I am a body, and you are a body, and we are relating to each other as people who are fully present in our own flesh, then it's much easier for us to understand what it means that God is fully present in flesh. And it's easier for us to behave as if we worship, as we do, a God who had the scandalous courage to come to us in flesh. My ministry is not graceful in the customary sense. I drop everything I pick up.
Girl, that's baby.
When I was learning to celebrate at the table, I had to be very careful not to drop the body and blood of Christ. And I had to figure out that that there was a kind of beauty my broken body, offering the broken body of Christ to my congregation.
We give thanks to you, O God, for the goodness and love which you have made known to us in creation, in the calling of Israel to be your people, in your word spoken to the prophets.
At the Eucharist, that we encounter intimately God's brokenness, and that God's brokenness encounters our own, so that when I take the broken body of Christ in my hands, and I cradle it in my palms, and I hold it on my tongue, what's happening is that God's brokenness, God's disability, God's humility, whatever word you want, becomes a part of my own. It's not only my brokenness that gets transformed at the Eucharist, but yours and the guy kneeling next to me and the old lady in the third pew who's been in church since she was 3, and all of us together then are shaped into the body of Christ.
And when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me."
This is Christ saying, I have come to you, I have given you myself. Now give me your body to do those things that I would do, to touch and to heal and to bless and to walk with dirt on our skin together through the world.
Do this in remembrance of me.
I remember when I was 17, you know, a 17-year-old cat, and I opened a beauty magazine in the grocery store. I forget which one. And I saw a picture of a girl who was wearing the same clothes that I happened to be wearing that day. It was really fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your perspective. And she looked so much more beautiful than I ever could. You know, she was 15 pounds lighter, and her hair was beautifully done, and she had great makeup, and she'd probably been airbrushed to seventh heaven. But I looked at that picture, and I thought, I will never get there. And I spent most of the next year in a fit of teenage peak, trying to avoid my body entirely. Not looking in mirrors, not skipping my physical therapy appointments. Just, it was basically an extended temper tantrum, I think. But it was painful. And when we set up for ourselves ideals that are the wrong ideals and that we simply can't reach, if we can't reach them, when we realize we can't reach them, it becomes so much easier just to shut off and say, well, fine, I can't be that. I can't be the perfect pastor. I can't be the perfect supermodel. I just can't do it. So I'm gonna stop. I can't deal with the guilt. I can't deal with the pressure. And that's just it. As a culture, we've fallen into the trap of allowing imperfections to be deeply stigmatizing. We believe that imperfections can only diminish us. That if we are diabetic, or if we have cancer, or if we are overweight, or if we have cerebral palsy, we are somehow less than we should be. We keep shortchanging ourselves. We keep aiming for a perfection which is one-sided, one-dimensional, glossy and attractive, but false. When I preside at the Eucharist and I look out at my congregation, what I'm seeing are broken people who, in their brokenness and in their arguments and in their nitpicky, I don't want to sit in the third pew, I want to sit in the fourth pew, or we changed the altar cushions. I like the ones that are blue and now they're red. In their humanness and their preoccupations and their worries and their pain are, just as I am, broken bodies, broken people walking towards wholeness. It says something about God, that God would call and consecrate and ordain a priest who is going to drop the broken body of Christ at some point in her ministry, and that God does not mind. My job is to remember where we're going. when my congregation can't, and to remind them week by week and day by day. Learn to become so aware of yourself and so aware of what God is doing in your life and in the life of the community around you, that everything you do shows forth the glory of God, even the imperfections. Here ended the lesson.
It's okay to be teary-eyed. I've watched that clip about a dozen times and I still get cracked up. I want to share this passage with you again, but this time from a different slant. Eugene Peterson writes a paraphrase of the Bible called The Message. In it, where he takes the Bible and interprets it into modern language. Listen to how Eugene Peterson interprets the words of the Apostle Paul. This resurrection life you receive from God is not a timid, grave-tending life. It's adventurously expectant. Greeting God with a childlike, "What's next, Papa?" God's Spirit touches our spirits and confirms who we really are. We know who He is, and we know who we are, Father and children. And we know we are going to get what's coming to us, an unbelievable inheritance. We go through exactly what Christ goes through. If we go through the hard times with Him, then we're certainly going to go through the good times with Him. I believe that's the theology spoken of by Claire Wimbush. We're not perfect in the sense of unblemished, airbrushed, perfect type of body. We are broken. We go through exactly what Christ goes through. Pain, suffering, loss, grief, fear for the future, fear about an upcoming doctor's appointment, fear about the elections, fear about getting the crops, fear about the economy, fear about our investments. And I'm not just talking about retirement or the stock market. That certainly brings a lot of anxiety and fear with it, but we fear those things that we invest in, that we put our time and our energy and our donations into, like the church. Things we care about, things we don't want to see go away. Fear about the future of our town, our community, our nation. We fear about our children, our neighbors, our friends, our parents, those we care about. But you know, I don't read about fear in this passage. Fear is not on the lips of Claire Wimbush anymore. Maybe this is the theology she's talking about. A theology of hope. Comes from the very pen of the Apostle Paul. If we go through the hard times with Him, then we're certainly going to go through the good times with Him. I want to end today with a story by Sheryl Sandberg. Some of you might be familiar with her. She is one of the top executives at Facebook. And she tells this story, and she's been very public about it, about a time that she lost her husband at a very early age. They were on vacation he had a heart attack. Left her with 2 young children. And people came up to her and they said, Cheryl, how did you find the strength? Cheryl, how did you find hope? Now recently, Sheryl Sandberg was featured on the PBS show Finding Your Roots. And she learned some things about her ancestors. They were Jews in Russia, and they went through unbelievable persecution. Pogroms. They were kicked out of their village, and they had to get on a boat all by themselves. Imagine that. Leaving your homeland, getting on a boat, riding on a boat all by yourself, not knowing where you're going. You can't speak anyone else's language. And Cheryl said that she learned something about one of her great-grandmothers. And this was the quote that she said. Sometimes you have no hope. You need someone next to you providing that hope, saying, I'll carry it for you. I'll take it for you. And when you're ready, you'll have hope. Being adopted by God as a child of God means that God is next to you, carrying that hope for you. And when you are ready, you'll have hope. I think this is the theology we need. Amen. I'm going to ask our ushers to wait upon us as we give back to God.